Hey everybody, Nick Molbach here. Happy Oscar Sunday. Every once in a while, obviously, we have shows where we have to plan around certain scheduling things. And just as a coverage thing for the Oscars, we're going an hour early tonight. So I appreciate it. Everybody who's here with us watching right now and who's live with us. Obviously, Oscar Sunday is always an exciting day of the week. Right now, I'm going to be going solo. I'm not sure if Matt will join me later on, but he had a scheduling conflict beforehand, so he should be joining me. But we'll see. If not, it's not a big deal. Handle it. But tonight we are joined by Sarah Ammons, actress and production assistant. I saw as well. But what's different about you is obviously we cover a lot of people who are within the actual Ohio market and such locally, but you were in the Ohio market and you transitioned out to LA, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Well, that's extremely exciting it's obviously definitely a different perspective when it comes down to things. And if anybody watching live has any questions for Sarah, please leave them in the comments and we will get them on screen and answered for you. But Sarah, I guess I'll start off with this. Do you have a certain Oscar memory or any predictions for this year's show? I guess it's obviously so different with everything that's going on.
I guess I don't have anything particularly for this year, but I do have an Oscar memory that kind of kicked off my start to LA. Funny, believe it or not, I was actually in LA a couple years ago when the Oscars were going on. And unfortunately, I had no idea that the Oscars were going on at this time. And I was staying literally a block from where they were hosting the Oscars. And then, wow, walking by, you're like, what's going on? Like, oh, it's maybe just, another event happening in LA. And then you realize the red carpet's down. They're having statues of literally the Oscar, and it's like, wow, like this is meant to be. I'm supposed to be in LA. Unfortunately, when I got to LA, 2 weeks later, the whole world shut down during COVID. So it kind of delayed my start to LA, but it kind of reinforced me being in LA during the Oscar week that this is where I needed to be. And I ended up watching the documentary series. I was actually attending an event for the Oscars during the documentary series, and that was the year that somebody from Ohio won the documentary series. So it was a pretty cool experience, and I'll always remember it for the rest of my life. So.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. See, my Oscar story that I always end up telling is the night that La La Land ended up winning Best Picture, I decided to go to bed. And then Moonlight won shortly after, which is one of my favorite films of all time. So I completely was like in the morning, completely dumbfounded that La La Land didn't end up winning Best Picture. And I was completely wrong in my judgment of just needing to stay awake slightly for a few more minutes on it. But yeah, we definitely, you always like to lead off with a little bit about yourself. So if you'd like to tell us about what it is that you do when it comes to filmmaking and how you ended up getting into it.
Yeah, so basically I'm an actress. I have dabbled into some of the behind the scenes with directing and creating my own content as well, especially in Ohio. You don't get as many opportunities as you would in a big market like Atlanta or LA. So you really have to go in the mindset of, I'm going to create my own content. I'm going to get friends together, especially if you want to create a demo reel. That's super important when you get out to LA. You have to have, everything lined up so you can kind of hit the ground running once you get out there. So I started, working as actually in a theater down in Florida. I was on the business side of things, and it was a small local professional theater. And I got to talking to the actors when we had opening nights. I would put on opening night events, and I really was interested in what they were saying about acting and how they all got started and kind of the world that they were living in. And so I made the decision there to quit that job and head back to Ohio because I knew about the independent film scene here in Ohio, and I was super interested. And I knew I needed to get my feet wet if I ever wanted to head out to the big city in LA. So I joined Steve Francia's acting class, Cincinnati Actor Studio down in Cincinnati. And then it kind of was went from there, did a couple independent film projects as well as commercials, signing with Helen Wells Agency down in Cincinnati. I got any and every experience I possibly could here in Ohio and here in Cincinnati, which made the transition out to LA a lot smoother for me.
Absolutely fantastic. And what sparked the transition out to LA for you? Obviously, with the Oscars, you kind of knew that that was where you wanted to be, but I mean, obviously, big fish in a little pond type saying always ends up going around and such. I like to imagine that opportunities just everywhere. You know what I mean? And there's exciting opportunities wherever it is that you go in life. So, what was the reasoning for the transition to LA as opposed to the Ohio film market?
I think the biggest reason was I wanted to pursue this full time, and the opportunities out in LA, it doesn't compare to any other market that I've been to. And I was fortunate enough to actually meet with a writer out there and a producer out there, and kind of get the lay of the land. And they kind of, explained to me how it all worked. And then from there, I was like, I want to take acting seriously. It's something I'm super passionate about. I do want to experience, the bigger sets. Like, I was recently on a Disney project, which was super awesome. I guess it's kind of always been a childhood dream to live and work out in LA, and then, financially be able to do it, and have the love and support for my friends and my family. It just made sense. So, I'm super fortunate that I have the support system that I did. And, I just took the leap of faith. Unfortunately, it was terrible timing, right before COVID happened, but I'm fortunate to be out here again. So,
well, and that does transition to another point. We always kind of like to ask, how has COVID not only impacted what you're doing, but I like to personally see it. In our last week guest, he talked about all the different films that he was making during the time. How do you use this time in order to hone your craft and continue to be able to work on things to keep the passion alive?
I think the biggest difference once COVID hit was the ability to literally talk to anybody and everybody around the world and in the industry. I was fortunate enough to actually attend an Actors Expo before COVID hit out in LA, and they gave me a bunch of resources. And one of the resources was a company that literally every Wednesday and every Friday, they would have Zoom meetings with casting directors, managers, agents, people, actors in the industry that have been in the industry for 20 something years. And I was able to literally sit on a Zoom call with them and get their experiences. And I don't think if COVID had happened that any of that would have happened for me. And, to get that real life Zoom experience was super fortunate. Obviously, we had a lot of time on our hands. Celebrities, before COVID hit, you couldn't get a second of FaceTime in front of them. And then to get an hour or two in front of an agent, managers, actors that have been in the industry for 20 something years, I couldn't have dreamed of that. So definitely getting the Zoom call experience, learning the business side, was definitely something super helpful that, once you learn the business side of things and you get to LA, you realize how much work you still have to do. So
exactly. And the networking side of things has obviously changed how things are done so much. And I always like to look at the good things when it comes down to it, like the ability for us to be able to do what we're doing right here kind of sparked from all of this ending up happening. We have a co-host that lives out in Oklahoma City, so it's just like it's so interesting to see. Obviously you always want to look on the bright side of life when it comes down to it. Now, has this changed? This clearly has changed the way auditions are going on and such. Has the virtual? How has your experience been with the virtual side of auditions? And obviously, the in-person has to have changed a lot as well.
Yeah, I definitely think auditions, I'm not going to lie, in the beginning I was a little stubborn because I, moved out to LA so I could specifically audition in person and make in-person auditions. And then COVID hits, and then they were like, oh, hold up. Anybody, anywhere in the world can audition for this. And you're like, oh. So it was, at first it was heartbreaking, but then You learn how to master, video auditions, which I have found super helpful because you can literally give the casting director your best take. If it takes an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you give them your best. And I think it gives you the ability to learn how to edit and direct, and be a reader all at the same time, where as before, you may not have gotten those opportunities doing in-person auditions. So I think it's cool.
And like we've had an actor online personality on before talk about that process, and it's just been so interesting to hear that it has in a way helped. Obviously you obviously want to be there and kind of get that experience down, but the ability to be able to kind of give your best take, obviously as an actor myself in a different life a long time ago, it was a lot of like, oh man, I wish that I could have done this over. And and not only will that help obviously with the confidence for auditions right now, but definitely when it comes to in-person auditions, you're just going to feel a little bit better about yourself knowing that you've had this practice and this time to kind of perfect what it is that you want to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, it's an audition is an opportunity to practice and to put yourself out there. So the more auditions that come in for you, the more practice that you're able to have, even especially because the class is going over Zoom as well. In LA, they still have not fully transitioned into the in-person classes, which I'm excited for. Zoom classes just don't do the same for me, but
Yeah, I completely understand that. I was, I guess, lucky enough to have missed the Zoom side of classrooms and stuff like that. But I do enjoy doing things in person a lot more when it comes down to being around people. So one of the things that you had mentioned as a topic of discussion was it's a journey, not a destination in this industry. And that stuck out to me as the thing that was like, oh, we have to have her on for this, because I always thought, that's the way that I feel personally. It's like I always kind of see it as, or at least from what I took from it, it's always kind of just take the opportunities that you possibly can and just, let them ride and see how they end up turning out, because you never know what's going to be next for you. And I obviously want to hear your take on how you feel about that statement.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't say it any better, Nick. Acting, it's a roller coaster ride. I literally just had a coffee meeting with one of my actor friends who just moved out to LA as well. And we were like, it's a roller coaster. When you're on set, the highest of highs you feel. And then when you're not booking, it's the lowest of lows. You're like, wait, I just worked on this massive Hollywood production, and now I'm sitting at home waiting for another opportunity.
Right.
And that's when you have to fill your time with other creative outlets, like, doing something like this or doing a podcast or even, writing your own script. You're going to have high success moments and you're going to feel extremely low because you aren't working. And like you said, it is the journey, not the destination. If you set a certain goal for yourself and you don't reach it, then you're going to constantly be disappointed. But if you have the mindset of this is a marathon, not a race, you will have a way better outcome than if you constantly, because you're going to constantly get rejected. I mean, that's just the name of this game. And, being blessed to meet new people and be on sets and just constantly putting yourself out there and having the mindset that, this is what you love to do, and having a positive outlook on everything that you audition for, or you go into class and you're like, yes, I get to meet somebody new, or I get to experiment with this role. Just having that positive mindset has been super helpful for me, especially in LA.
I couldn't even imagine, the idea of branching out for me at least isn't there yet, but I can obviously see where those opportunities come. You want to take as many of them as you possibly can. That's how I am. A lot of people say that I can't say no. And it's just like, to me, I never know where my next opportunity is going to come from. And if working on this is going to possibly bring that next opportunity here. And that's why, we never stop working. We just want to keep on keeping on and keep on practicing as much as we possibly can.
Exactly. And that's kind of how this project that I came up with Disney was. I used to play basketball in college, and somebody had mentioned to me, the company out there specifically cast for athletes. And, I put my profile together for this casting company, haven't heard back from them for 6 months. I get randomly out of the blue, I'm at work, I get a text saying, "Hey, would you like to work on this project for Disney?" And I'm like, "Wait, what?" Yes, of course I would. I'm going to drop everything that I'm doing. And I spent 2 weeks working with Disney, and it was just an incredible feeling. And if I hadn't put myself out there like that, then the opportunity wouldn't have come up for me. So I was super fortunate.
Absolutely. That is fantastic to hear. I always enjoy hearing that, just take as many opportunities as you possibly can, and then something big will come of it. So projects that you've worked on in the past, specifically in Ohio, because that's where a lot of our viewers end up coming from. If you want to talk a little bit about those and potential projects in the future.
Yeah, so a recent film just came out that I worked with called Next of Kin. It came out on YouTube probably about a month and a half ago. I did that. It was a great project to work on. It was my first feature film as a lead, so that was awesome to finally see that project come together after 2 years. We worked on that 2 years ago. I've also done commercials for Infinity Dayton. I worked with a group called Autograph. They do a lot of car commercials, so I've done commercials with them as well. I've also done an independent pilot for it's called Bootleggers, with a director out of Dayton, Ohio. His name is Eric. Eric. And then I've also worked on a Columbus pilot as well called Cuckoo Carl. We did that about 2 or 3 years ago, working with Bill Wickhart, which was super fun. I love the DP. Actually, the DP on that project, I actually worked on another project for them in Columbus, and my roommate who was out in LA, both of my roommates out in LA actually came to Ohio and worked on this project that I worked with DP on. I was like, what a small world. They were actually the Grip and Electric for it. So I was like, oh, filmmaking is such a small world, and you never know who you're going to run into.
It's absolutely insane. The last project that I was directing, one of our makeup people, I was like talking to her, and I'm like, "Do you know blah blah blah? I went to school with her." And then she's like, "Oh wow, she's my best friend." I'm like, "That is the smallest of possible worlds that you possibly can come into."
Yeah, it is, and it's amazing how many people you get to meet in this industry, and I mean, I think that's one of the most fortunate parts and things that I love the most about this industry is you never know who you're going to meet and what kind of connection you're going to have with people, especially through storytelling. It just heighten those emotions, and I've met a lot of great people along the way, and I'm super fortunate and super looking forward to everybody else that I'm going to meet in this next coming years. So.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely out in LA, it's a world of opportunity and a world of networking that you possibly can do. So projects that you would like to work on. We always like to ask our actors or actress guests, what is it that there could be a project that drove you to wanting to be an actress, or just different things like that. So, are there any specific types of roles that you would like to play, especially with our viewership reaching out to directors and such?
Yeah, I think beginning out, I had no idea who I was going to be as an actress. And then I started taking acting classes and realized the dramas and the real stories. I love biographies and autobiographies and understanding real life perspectives on how somebody got where they were. I think have been drawn in as an actress to do those roles. Obviously, Here and Again. I love to do short comedic 30-minute commercials. I think those are super fun just to get myself out of the element. I never like to box myself in, but the dramas and the real life stories is something I'm super passionate about. So, and I happen to be a huge fan of Grey's Anatomy. So if there was one episode that I got on, but I think they're about to end filming Grey's Anatomy, but that was something on my bucket list.
Yeah, shows like that. Hey, I mean, shows like that come around a lot. I feel as though I know a lot of people who have worked on the Chicago shows and such, which I think are out of Georgia. But yeah, that's quite the list because I for one am a huge fan of dramas myself, and just kind of more raw, small cast type, just character pieces more or less than anything else. And I could only imagine that that is something that they prepare you for when it comes to your classes and training out there.
Oh yeah, for sure. Steve Francia really, my acting coach here in Cincinnati, he really pushed us to be the 1% and get out of our comfort zone
Mhm.
each and every class. And I think it's super important as an actress just let everything go. Who you are outside of class, who you're outside of acting, forget about it. Nobody cares if you look silly acting a 30-minute scene. Just let yourself go. I think that was kind of the biggest thing when I first started out that was holding me back is just, oh, is somebody going to judge me on how I act? No, just let it go.
Right. Yeah, just let yourself branch out into these different roles and kind of just see, because it's funny because I always kind of look at things when it comes to directing as you're never going to know who is going to end up delivering the best role. I mean, obviously that's why we do these auditions, but even so, one of the projects that I worked on, like we kind of knew who we wanted as this cast, but when they were all together, it was just like almost a unanimous, everybody knew each other but they never had met each other before type feeling. um and yeah, that is super duper exciting. Now, you had mentioned that you worked at a theater. Was theater something that you had done before that really got you into acting, or was it just the experience at the theater that really made you want to go into
So I happened to minor in theater in college. I managed with my busy basketball schedule in college. I couldn't actually be in a show, but I was taking classes and I was, doing stagecraft. I was doing theater production, so I was on the production side and building sets and taking acting classes. And I was like, I kind of like this. So I ended up interning as a teaching artist for a summer camp at this particular theater, and I was like, yeah, I kind of want to do this full time. So I ended up working at this theater, and so I think that kind of kickstarted my love for acting. But I just wasn't quite sure how I could really dive into acting until I got back here in Cincinnati. So
Mhm.
theater, I love theater, but I think film and TV is kind of where I want to put my main focus on, especially if you want to do it full time. It's kind of you kind of have to narrow your route down a little bit. So
Yeah, and I could only imagine the subtle differences between theater, or not well, theater, of course, but television and film. So do you have prefer one over the other, or are they pretty much the same when it comes down to that?
I think film is the ultimate goal.
Mm.
I don't really have a particular reason why, other than I just feel like film, you have more time and it's more, where TV, it's kind of, you have your characters, they kind of, go on their storylines. And I kind of feel like it's a little bit more predictable. Whereas as far as films, it's 3 months and you've got to film this in 3 months or 6 months or however long. And just the process, I feel like you're more ingrained into the process of filmmaking as an actress instead of show up, work 10 to 6, go live your life, show up the next day 10 to 6.
Right.
It's much more structured. Whereas as far as filmmaking is, I feel like can be a little bit more creative.
Mhm.
As far as TV, they kind of have what the storyline's gonna be. So,
Right. And speaking of film and TV, when it comes down to this question, I this is a question that appeared in my mind last week that I kind of now want to be asking everyone because it's such an interesting point. I know as a filmmaker myself, my dream growing up was always, let's go to the theater and see this, and hey, I was a part of this. And COVID happened, and as we finished our first feature film, of course, COVID happens and theaters aren't necessarily going away. They're starting to have their resurgence now. I know out in LA, one of the most popular theaters of all time had to unfortunately close.
mm.
Um, but what is your perspective on streaming versus the theater experience? Because I know that like Disney especially, they're putting out their movies in theaters, but you also have the ability to watch it at home. HBO is doing the same exact thing. What is your perspective on even just the idea? Like I collect a million DVDs that I've never watched before. It
What are
feels like
DVDs? What are those?
yes, exactly. And it's like, you know, that was another dream of mine was going to the seeing somebody on Instagram tag me in a post with a DVD of mine and going, "Hey, look at this what I found." And I feel like that's ultimately not the route that Hollywood is going. So what is your perspective on streaming versus the actual physical media and or theaters?
I think I personally prefer theaters just because it is an experience. You know, you have the sound system, you have the screen going from ceiling to the wall to wall. It's just, well, unless you have the ability to have your own home theater,
Right.
I think streaming services, unfortunately, I feel like are extremely taking off right now because they can put so much content out. I know when I'm personally watching Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus, I'm scrolling through and I'm just like, amazed at how much content is on these. It's like I can watch a movie a day and still not watch every single movie on here. So it's a little overwhelming, and I don't think you quite get the same experience that directors and filmmakers and actors want you to have while experiencing their film. I don't think that emotional connection, at least for me, won't happen for the audience members as easily as if it were in the theaters and even in the drive-ins. You can't leave out the good old drive-ins.
Yeah, and I had like recently started to go to drive-ins again for like the first time in a long time, and I'm like, this is it. Like this is, you know, I get the theater like experience, but I don't have to hear, you know, three people in the row behind me talking because uh that's always my complaint is that there's just, you know, I'm one of those people who if I hear or see a phone three rows all the way down below me, I can notice it and it just ruins my experience for me. And we have Maddie Leach in the comments saying, "I can't wait to go back to seeing movies in theaters." I was gonna say, you and me both. When it comes down to it, it's just it's a different feeling, you
It is.
know. And that's why I like to ask that question because I could imagine, though, as an actress, that streaming services are creating more of an opportunity, though, for different projects to be taking off. Whereas opposed to the movie theater, you have, you know, your 10 to 15 movies that are going to be screening in the theater for the month or the time frame. Um, you know, a streaming service could obviously open doors when it comes to projects and such, for sure.
Absolutely. I think we're as filmmakers, actors, actresses, directors, writers, I think we're in a time where there is endless opportunities, not only to be put on projects for big companies like YouTube, Disney, Hulu. I mean, you name it. Those opportunities are endless, and the fact that we can create our own content now easier than we've ever been able to, and it's acceptable into the industry, you know, creating stuff off of your phones. I mean, like, who would have imagined 10, 15 years ago that we would have had this ability to buy a phone and get some friends together and create an experience in a movie and tell a story, and just getting those stories out is so easy. And I hope that people don't hold back because they don't think they have the ability to do it. Just grab a bunch of friends, and you never know what might happen in the future.
Absolutely. And that's always my perspective on it as well. It's, you know, you have your phone, you have the ability to make a movie. I mean, they make gimbals for cell phones that you can obviously carry around and such. Um, I feel like my phone has become better than my own regular camera that I use. Just like its ability to shoot. And I love that and I hate that at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, should I be really making my movie with my phone? But really, that opportunity is out there, and that is fantastic because, you know, and for you, and I congratulate you on just being on a part of all these different projects and such because there's uh, what I always like to tell people is, you know, there's that amount of people who think they can do it, and then there's that amount of people that do it, and there's amount of people that get their film distributed and all that, and it's like there's levels, and if you're in that level, that's just such an exciting feeling, and why you should never let it go for sure.
Yeah, and if one project for whatever reason, happens not to go through, don't let that determine your other successes. Yeah, a project not following through could leave you jaded in this industry, but just know that if you're putting yourself out there, you're gonna continue to create opportunities for yourself. And I keep telling myself, just keep adding more lists to be on, adding more casting directors that you talk to, and keep them updated on what you're doing, because you never know when somebody calls you up randomly and says, "Hey, I need you for this project," and you've got what the director needs. You've always got to be constantly putting yourselves on those lists to create more opportunities for you.
Absolutely. And I mean, though that was great advice right there, I'll leave us on this. Do you have any advice for budding actors and actresses, especially who are trying to get into the LA market, that maybe hasn't been mentioned throughout this podcast?
Yeah, I've actually thought about this the other day. Is what would I have told myself a year ago, 2 years ago, um, um, and just the couple months that I have consistently been in LA.
Mm.
Um, it's the demo reels. It's having your portfolio together so you can show the casting directors and agents and directors. They're constantly asking, "Hey, can you show me a headshot or a demo reel?" Or even they're going to clips now on Actors Access. Having casting websites. I mean, you have to have yourself together, I think, first before you head into the LA market. There's a lot of things, headshots, demo reels, theatrical reels versus commercial reels. Definitely, if you're in a smaller market like Ohio or the Midwest, I would definitely recommend, doing those projects with your friends and creating a demo reel. So if you want to head out to the LA market or the New York market, or even Atlanta, it's becoming a hotbed for film and TV, is putting all your portfolio stuff together, getting into classes, and be willing to fail first before you think any success is going to happen, because it's not going to happen overnight. It's a journey, not a destination.
That's right. That's the tagline for this episode. But it is really the best advice that you possibly can give somebody, is that, you just got to keep working at their craft in order to possibly get to the point that they need to be in. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Is there any place that people can find you on social media or anywhere else on the internet in order to catch up on what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I have an Instagram, and my handle is Sarah Nicole _Ammons. And I think, Nick, you just recently followed me on that. So we do have mutual friends. If you follow Nick, he does follow me, and I follow him back. So Instagram is where to find me. And I wish everybody good luck and enjoy the Oscars tonight, Nick. Do you have any predictions on who's going to win Best Picture tonight?
Um, and it's so funny that you say that, because it's like every year my co-host Matt and I, we try and watch through all the Best Picture nominations, and there just hasn't been that much time. I love Sound of Music this year. It was a fantastic film, well acted. I have a feeling it's going to be Nomadland, which is another great movie this year. But no, I just am hoping for a good night of film. Just something that we all can enjoy and kind of shed the light on the industry that we love so much. Always is one of my favorite times of the year. But thank you, Sarah, so much for joining us for this episode. We have all sorts of content coming this week for everybody who's watching. So if you're here, please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. And follow Sarah on Instagram. The link will be in the bio, just to make sure that everybody can read it and everything. But for that, my name is Nick Molbach, and this has been another Real Talk. Thank you so much for joining us, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Adieu, adieu. Parting is such sweet sorrow.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.